of sharing a lot of information about the faith. Hopefully you're reading about our church, and hopefully you're reading the newsletters that we get, because there is a lot of information in there. But you don't have a lot of live content in real time from someone sharing what's happening in the church. So this kind of, I think, fills that need for us, and it's important that we come to these. So I want to just start off with saying I was at Disneyland not too long ago, and I saw a poster that represented Disney that said, "The greatest stories don't have to end." And I thought that was so great. And so I filed it away. This, just so you know, is how sermons are built on the Matterhorn. You see a little poster here, a poster there, and that inspires your pastors to write things. But I filed it away several months ago, and I thought, wow, there's something that's there, and it made me really think about Bidwell, and that the greatest stories don't have to end, and just the active and vibrant ministry that we have today. You know, during the pandemic 4 years ago, there's occasional Debbie Downer talk or negative Nell, to be gender inclusive. Ray tells me that's important. If I say Debbie Downer, I have to say negative Nell. So, but sometimes we had to make careful decisions during the pandemic because we wanted to, while the right to assembly is important, we really wanted to be mindful about showing love and care for our neighbor as we were learning what COVID-19 was. So we took really careful steps. And occasionally I would hear some comments by Debbie Downer or negative Nell. Our church is going to go down the tubes. What are we doing? We're going to lose people. Everyone's falling out of habit. We're never going to have a vibrant church again. I just processed it. I made decisions with the elders. We made decisions as carefully as we could. And I was, in a lot of ways, really disappointed by those statements. I was kind of surprised, And our church actually was still largely open the first couple months. We pre-recorded from home and did careful steps there. But eventually we had services on the patio, and eventually soon we would open to inside worship. But I guess what I want to say right now is think about where we were in the throes of the pandemic to where we are now. If you come here regularly, or even somewhat regularly, you will notice there is a lot of life and vibrancy around here. And we are feels like eons away from where we were back then. There is just so much life here at our church. Attendance has shot up comparatively. Our church is growing younger. Our middle school and senior high ministries are thriving. If you listen to what Nate and Brooke just said, that's like God's megaphone to you. Youth ministry, thriving, a lot of life there. You heard from our confirmands this morning. Our children's ministry is gaining more and more families. Our adult education program has more offerings than it did a year prior to the pandemic. We're offering classes on other days than just on Wednesdays. So we're not just doing the Wednesday night thing. We're teaching classes on other days to meet people's needs, and many of them online. Somehow we've been able to maintain, when we host it, a relatively vibrant midweek program. That model of midweek dinners is so ancient. I hope you know. It's like from the 1970s. Most churches have clobbered it. We actually still have one, and people show up. That's a really great thing. Getting people here on a Wednesday night. Think about your weeks and how full they are. People come. We have more and more ways that we are introducing contemplative practice for alternative and additional ways to connect with God. Things like the Ember Days service that we had here in the fall, and also the Good Friday service that we had at noon. We're involving ourselves in the refugee problem in America under the leadership of Mission by partnering with regional and international agency World Relief. We have Serve Chico twice a year. Our church is more committed to helping the helpless through ARM, Ambassadors for Reconciliation Jail Ministry. And you are here this morning in worship. You saw that we received 20 confirmands into our church. So it's great. Good. There is life here. And as I said before, the greatest stories don't have to end. There are some who have held to believe that Bidwell's best days were in her past, but I'm seeing a lot of life and vibrancy here, a lot of transformation that's happening, and seeing also how incredibly faithful God is to our church. And all of this, I'm sure you probably know probably know this, but we're living in different cultural times than 30 years ago. Probably have noticed political division, a pandemic of loneliness, rapid rises of apathy toward religiosity, and even hostility. And so one thing I want to tell you, too, as you look around at our church right now, and as you use metrics, and right now we're seeing a rise in every ministry department in terms of people showing up and transforms lives, but we also have to be mindful that growing a church today is not the same as it was before. Sometimes we make comparisons to, there was a day when we had 150 college students or whatever number, and I don't know how accurate that number is, but whatever it is, and 30 years ago it was a different animal. Same thing with youth group. Maybe there was 100 students or other areas of church life, and we can make comparisons. But those are not really apt comparisons. We can't make them because growing a church today is just a different animal. I was introduced to a trend several years ago called grow towing. Grow towing is the idea is that if you have plateaued in attendance and participation in your church, you're actually growing. It used to be that it was only if you see this numbers rise and rise and rise and rise. So if you are seeing maintenance, that means you're growing and have a really healthy church. And if you are seeing an increase in participation and lives transformed, then you are way ahead of the curve. You are the exception. You are not the rule. And so as we look at health, we need to bear these differing trends in mind, that where we are today is a very, very good place, and we cannot compare, especially since the pandemic, but we cannot compare to where we were 30 or however many years ago in terms of comparison. But I want to get back to the different growth that we have seen. I listed a lot of things. A lot of them had to do with numbers. A lot of this can be really equated to like butts in the pews, right? How many people show up? I hope that those metrics are not the only thing that interests you about our church and its success. It is one way to measure success, right? Usually the typical ones are how much money do we have and how many people show up on Sunday. But what our session has been doing is looking at a variety of metrics. We look at those two, but we look at some other ones as well. Here's one thing that we're looking at. We're looking at servant leadership. We have seen a rapid increase in servant leadership. And what I mean by that is volunteerism. We have a lot of people involved of the different generations. And you can see this just, for example, since we're all here on Sundays mostly, by looking at the platform. Sometimes you go, who's that person? We had a new person up there this morning. We have the generations represented. That's just one sampling. But we're seeing this in other ministry areas, people coming off the sidelines and getting actively involved. We saw this with confirmation. We were really intentional about engaging people who weren't previously involved and getting them to be a confirmand. Also, we have testimony after testimony about the warmth of our congregation. One of our metrics for session has been what we're calling relational warmth, that we want to be a church that has an environment where people feel welcomed and where they feel seen. And so session last year was counting testimonies and hearing stories and passing them on to one another. And also growing young, which takes time. As I said before, our college ministry 30 years ago, it's a different animal. It doesn't mean we cannot grow in this area, but it will take more time. And Pastor Ray and his ministry team in session have been doing a formidable job at that. We're seeing more young people. Again, look at the platform. It's not just the baby boomers. It's not just the members of Gen X. We are seeing younger people. And these are all signs of health. And so session, as we've been looking at health, the three primary things we're looking at is testimonies around relational warmth, servant leadership. Are we seeing people committed and involved? And are we continuously growing younger? And I want to say on that note, Pastor Ray's work leadership has been phenomenal. I should say Reverend Dr. Ray, who actually has his doctorate is in engaging emerging adults, career 20s, and college students. And he is very committed in helping to lead our session in that endeavor. But we have more work to do. A really important question for us to ask as a congregation is how important is you to engage the next generation? I mean, really. You know, Andy Stanley, the pastor, once said that any healthy church has a strategy for how to reach the next generation. And it's so true. And we actually have a strategy. A lot of it comes down to relationships and warm community, to name a few things. Belonging before belief and engaging younger people. But we have to ask, are we really willing to put our weight down? Are we really willing on Sunday morning to not merely talk to our friends, but to look around? Do I see a person here who might be in their 20s or in their late teens? Are we willing to make some adjustments in how we do worship? We have an evening worship service, but on Sunday morning there may be some things that we look at that we do a little bit uniquely. And how badly do we want to grow young, right? And Andy Stanley also said something to the effect of, our ministry should not be about merely retaining the people we have, but reaching the people we don't. I hope you hear that loud and clear. And actually, we should not be about merely retaining the people we have. We should be primarily about reaching the people who are not here. And it's something to think about. We're making strides, but it's a whole congregational endeavor for us to grow young. So servant leadership, relational warmth, and growing young are the three primary metrics the session's using to gauge congregational health. We're looking at butts in the pews, and we're looking at finances. Not saying those don't matter. They matter. However, there are other ways to gauge congregational health. There's a lot of reasons you get a lot of people in pews on Sunday mornings. Not all of them are good ones, actually. Some churches, right, where people come. So the greatest stories, friends, they don't have to end. And there is a lot, I believe, that we have to look forward to as Christ continues to tell Bidwell's story here. And a lot of things that I think you can be anticipating in the coming year is more engagement of young adults as we grow young, more contemplative practice. I've been very gifted on our staff to be partnering with Lauren Mesa. Every week I ask myself, why didn't we hire this woman earlier? Lauren is a wonderful gift and has been a real partner with me in helping to introduce contemplative practice at our church, which is, we've all learned the ways of knowing Christ through reading the Bible and prayer, and those are really important. And contemplative practice integrates those two disciplines into it. But it's leading a quieter life, or not quieter life, but a more intentional life with God. And Lauren and I are really wanting to cultivate that together. And in the future, we're going to see more and more, including a couple things we're launching in the fall. There are plans underway, and I'm saying this cautiously. We are having discussions right now as a church board and children's ministry to start an after-school program here, which I think would be a really amazing thing. It would do a lot in terms of leaning into our mission of joining in God's restoration, of engaging things like college students, young adults in that, of involving the community and showing that we are a church that cares about restoration. I think we need to utilize our strategic location as being a downtown church, and having an after-school program can fill a great need here in downtown. So we're doing that's been in the making for 6 months. We're kind of getting our legs up under us, so I'm just stating that carefully and preliminarily, but I believe this is something God is calling us to do right now, and it would involve a lot of commitment, and I'm excited to lean more into our mission statement. We are doing work right now in the community. We are using our adult education offerings to serve the community. We're doing a study right now on David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person. And we did that online. We've had some people get interested online who don't attend our church. We're going to do something else with that book in the fall, as well as inviting our congregation to read it as well. So we're using our offerings to support the community and to care for the community. And we are also going to be making strides in the coming year of having our sanctuary open during the week, so that people can come and pray and have a quiet space and for space to be held for them. You know, I was at Jesus Center doing a Bible study a year ago. I was talking to one of the clients there in my Bible study. He said, "What church are you from?" I said, "Bidwell." He says, "Oh, you're that church that always looks like it's closed." Oh, it's like a knife in my heart, you know. But it's because he walks by the front of the church during the weekday. You may not even recognize it as a church if you didn't know it was a church, right? And I care about that impression. That's one thing I'll always say for the Catholic Church. There's always a sense that it's open. So we're having discussions about that, about you're being able to come in here during the weekend to pray, and honestly to communicate to the community that there is a place for you here, a place where you can come, receive respite, if not air conditioning, and to be loved and to be cared for, and have a quiet place where you can withdraw from the busyness and noise of everyday life. So we have a lot that we are forecasting right now. A lot of really big plans that we are super excited about, and we're leaning into our mission statement of restoration. And we want to invite you to be part of it. We want you to know what we're thinking, what gives us energy as a session and as a staff. And I want to say that while our participation is up in our various ministry areas, the finances of our church do not match the enthusiasm of it. So it's something that we're going to have to really think about, or we're going to have to start making some changes. It's not like a threat. I'm just telling you reality. We really went on a faith budget this last year. We beefed up our staff. We beefed up funding in a lot of different ministry areas. And so a lot of the life you're seeing is because we've made some investments in various ministry departments. And I'll say more on that at another time of how important your financial commitment is here. But I just want you to know first what you're contributing toward, like where we're going, what we're doing, what we're energized about, and that everything here is so incredibly intentional. And finally, I want to close on a note of, right now I am heading up a ministry with a handful of people in our church. And it's a ministry that is intended to help promote a culture of invitation at our church, and to invite you to invite people. I believe that our faith sharing really comes down to two things. It comes down to being excited about our relationship with Jesus Christ and being excited about the church of which you are part of. Those two things are really important. And I think we have a lot of that going on here. And so what this ministry team is going to be doing is just offering little encouragements here and there to help us to be more in the pattern of thinking about the other. Like I said, the people that aren't here. We shouldn't be satisfied merely with the people we've got, but the people that aren't showing up. Late teens, 20s, and beyond. And so that's a new ministry that I'm personally taking on. And there's 5 of us on this team, and we are really excited about it. So friends, I want to say there's a role for you to play in having a culture of invitation, telling people about the gospel and helping them find this place where they belong. And all of your support matters a great deal. And just again, the greatest stories, they don't have to end. Christ has been faithful to this church for 157 years. The story hasn't ended. God is still being faithful. There's tons of life and vibrancy around us. And I want to close on this note of saying, too, as a pastor at Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church, I follow their worship services. I kind of worship with them online remotely, and love their pastor. And he says that every year his good friend from seminary calls him, and he leaves him a voicemail because he's usually preaching when his friend calls. And his voicemail on Easter Sunday is this: Jesus is on the loose, and then he hangs up. And he says that instead of Christ is risen, he is risen indeed. And I just love it. So friends, Jesus is on the loose. Jesus is on the loose here. So we got to pay attention and really partner with what the Holy Spirit is doing here. So with that, I want to say thank you for coming. The greatest stories don't have to end. And they don't end because of God's faithfulness and because you're saying yes to God's work in your life and the ministries of BPC. So, thanks. Have all the adults gotten a raffle ticket? Okay. We're going to draw tickets now. Do you want to speak into the mic? Okay, and the number is, you want to read that?
313528.
313528. Okay. And I want to give thanks to the hospitality team for all their hard work, for the delicious food. Thanks for all you've done in preparation. And why don't we close in a word of prayer? God, we thank you for this rich Sunday. We thank you for our church. We thank you for the new students who, of their own volition, have said yes to Jesus Christ and to his church with a capital C. We're grateful they are part of the Church Universal. We thank you for testimonies of Nate and Brooke. We thank you for all these families who are here and for all the love and care we receive through being in community with one another. We ask your blessing upon us each as we are the church in our own individual lives. And God, that you would help us to have open hearts and minds to ways you may be inviting us to participate outside the walls of this congregation on mission with you. We love you, and we are grateful for your faithfulness here at Bidwell. May you continue to carry us forward, because we know the greatest stories do not have to end, and they will not, because you are at the helm. In Jesus' name, amen.